What is happening? What is going on? Welcome to the Big Pick Podcast. I am joined by Mr. Bill. Only Mr. Bill today. Say hello, Bill.
Hey, hey, what's up?
Mr. Chicken is currently moving to a new location undisclosed. This is classified information that even we don't know. So, just know that he is out for this week. Should be back coming week one. We didn't. He's not. He's not on IR. He's just getting a week off.
Yep.
But
He's,
it's all good.
he's,
We should be ready by the time we need to record for week one, which should be fun. But we're still in the preseason, halfway through at the time of this recording. We do, even though it's just the preseason, it's actually a bit interesting, but not because things look competitive. None of that. There is some controversy within the players and coaching staff. You'd be surprised how some coaches who are quiet normally about stuff have spoken up, and athletes are speaking up. So, what am I talking about exactly? I am speaking, of course, about the new helmet rule situation, which I guess sounded good in practice, not in practice on paper, but in practice, it's giving a lot of defensive players a lot of headaches, and it is just basically, it is changing everything of what they've been taught and what has become muscle memory.
yep. It's a terrible rule.
Yep. Ironically, I bring this up because there were some situations for him when he was playing the Texans. Because these plays, not just this one, there were other games too. I forget what last week had this situation, or the week before, I mean, week one. But last week too, there was also the Jags Vikings game. A Jags defender who didn't even hit. I think was it Kirk? I don't know if it was Kirk or the backup. Didn't even hit the guy with his helmet, but because it went down, didn't even need to make contact. It was enough for the flag. When you see the top perspective, the helmet does not connect any part of its exterior with the player. So if anything, he just buckled his head, brought his head down, and brought him down with his shoulder and arms. Which, if anything,
Right.
isn't that what you want? Isn't that what you're trying to get? Go down, bring him with the shoulder and the arms, that's it. No helmet to helmet. None of that. But it was a flag for unnecessary roughness.
Yeah, it, it, it's so difficult because, and here's the other thing is the running backs will lower their head to, you know, uh, get ready to make contact with a defender. Will that be called against the running back? I mean, is it always the defender's fault for the contact that occurs? And some of the time is not. And I just don't get this rule. I mean, I understand why it's there, and it sounds like you said, it sounds all right in practice, but in actual game at high speed, you're trusting a 60-plus-year-old referee to see something in high speed and make a call on the field. And those refs are good, but they're not great. And I mean, this is just lead to an increase in penalties, an increase in stoppage time, and people tuning out of the games because of constant interruptions and stoppages of play for commercial breaks.
Yep. Remember, the goal was supposed to be about player safety, which I get. Concussions are not being treated, which that's another problem the NFL should be looking into, but they're addressing it the wrong way. But regardless, the goal was supposed to be player safety. The only problem is this is going against everything of what players have been taught. And there is not enough time to prepare for this, because this was just thrown in there. There was no, okay, this rule is going to be incorporated in like 2020, so you have 3 or so years to start grasping the concept or whatever. No forewarning, how when a new law is incorporated, like, okay guys, it's been voted in a couple months, it'll be enforced, so now you have that warning. You have that time to prepare and adjust. But here is just, okay, now it's a new thing. We're going to practice it in the preseason and the regular season this year, and let's see if it sticks. This one is going out the door ASAP because you're going to frustrate the players. And guess what's coming up, Mr. Bill? We've been talking about this every now and again. The good old CBA is going to be back into the discussion next year, so this is not a good time to upset your employees. You know,
Yeah,
you don't want to. You're going to try and make it bad for these players. Well, guess what? They ain't going to want to play for you.
right.
Forget money. It's just going against their standards and what they're taught.
Right. See, and going to that point of what they've been taught, they've been playing the game of football since, really early on, and they've been taught the basics of how to tackle from 25 years ago. 25 years ago, concussion protocols were not a thing, etc., etc. And that only is a 10-year occurrence. And most of the players that grew up playing youth football are now teenagers and in high school football. They still haven't even hit college yet with new methods of tackling, protecting your head, etc., etc. It's just I feel like until that group arrives onto the scene, we're not. You have a bunch of players that are in their 30s and 40s that have never been taught anything different than the way they've been taught, and to expect them to just change that just out of the blue is, like you said, a fallacy.
Yep, and let's get some quotes in here. First up, I want to get a one athlete's point of view. Well, first look at a coach, and then him. Mike Zimmer is saying that people are going to lose their jobs over this. People are going to go for this, and I think I don't understand how his context. I'm just reading the quote for what it was, but it's if I had to interpret it, I might interpret it as a way of people are going to lose their jobs, and it's not even going to be really their fault because of this rule forcing them to adapt, and it's going to cause them to struggle. And well, you know what you do with struggling players. You have to let them go because you're thinking they're not working optimally for the team. But when the rules are changed, it's like pulling the rug underneath their feet, and it's just making their job even harder.
Right.
I think what Mike Zimmer was trying to say is that it's going to cause unnecessary problems, and players are going to get the blame for it. Coaches are going to get the blame for it when it's really not their fault. But I'm pretty sure come next year when this is all over, because I don't know how bad this is going to get unless they pull the plug on it right now. It's not gonna pass next year. No way. But anyway, one other person or a player, Richard Sherman, as I mentioned earlier. These are from his tweets, so you can feel free to read them if you so please. So, anyway, let me get it. Here it is. I actually retweeted this one, so it's like there is no make adjustment to the way you tackle. Even in a perfect form tackle, the body is led by the head. The rule is idiotic. It should be dismissed immediately. When you watch rugby players tackle, they're still led by their heads. It'll be flag football soon, which is kind of funny considering this year they actually debuted flag football on NFL Network. So yeah, conspiracy. He's onto something. Anyway, since Mr. Chicken's not here, I did get his input from a tweet, mind you, as well, about what he thinks of this. Mr. Chicken's quote is, I understand where the league is coming from, but I don't think they understand how drastically it changes the game. Richard Sherman's perspective is correct. But I do agree, because Sherman, of course, if I'm going to get an idea of what it would mean, I would ask like coaches and players, and I think they have this more down than we do. And generally, everyone's more bothered, not because player safety is a concern, like I've said. Of course it is, but this is just already is making things way too complicated. Basically, this is what happens when you overthink a situation.
Instead of the idiotic catch rule, now we have an idiotic helmet rule.
Yeah.
I mean, what's next?
Yeah. I mean, just wait till they start fouling you for grabbing a jersey.
I mean, to be fair, you barely tap a quarterback's helmet with your hand, and you're getting a 15-yard penalty, even if it's inadvertent. I mean, it's kind of we're at a point right now where you can't play defense. There's no point in putting a defense on the field. Just might as well let them run up and down the field and see who can score touchdowns faster. That's what it is about right now.
Yeah. But anyway, let's move on to something else. Actually, well, 'cause that's the only thing I wanted to really discuss, because this is probably the I guess you could say the hottest subject in the NFL right now.
Right. Yep.
But anyway, let's talk about the schedule. We have my team, the last one of our three for our little preseason trifecta of episodes. This time we're talking Houston, so Mr. Bill, since Chicken ain't here, I forgot to ask for his record prediction, which if I remember to add it here, I will post it like right around now, or somewhere in the video or in the description of what Mr. Chicken thinks the Texans' win-loss record will be. Anyway, so in the meanwhile, I will be going, and Mr. Bill, you will chime in if you have anything to add, or if you disagree with which whether it's a win or a loss.
Right.
All right then, let's jump into it. So Houston, which by the way, I should mention, interstate rivalry is about Texas. So you got Dallas and Houston, so I may as well get this out of here. Let's hype up Houston a little bit, just like we have with the other two. So, Houston, unlike since the other two teams did not have a rival, I guess I have to mention it here. Houston is in a very positive situation. It just, if things go where they should. Of course, at long last, Houston, we have a quarterback. We have Deshaun Watson, who 2 teams passed on, I believe. Whether those quarterbacks are good or not, we'll see. Houston seems to really like Watson. I mean, the community likes him. I like him a lot.
Do I. I think he's going to be a star in the making.
Yep, other people, even his own rivals, respect him. Jalen Ramsey thinks he'll be a MVP like Carson Wentz, which in my opinion, it should have been Carson Wentz in IMO. But anyway, so this guy gets mad respect from the league already. He got taken out by a second ACL tear in his career as a quarterback. J.J. Watt was out. Whitney Merciless was out. They traded Dwayne Brown away to the Seahawks. So on and so forth. Basically, it's a team that's finally healthy again. It's just a matter of, will it A, stay healthy, and B, will everything just click this time? Mike Vrabel's gone. He is the head coach of the Titans. And, well, we have Romeo Crennel back, which in my opinion, I actually like him as our defensive coordinator.
I think that's actually an upgrade from Vrabel.
I can't tell you whether Vrabel will be a great head coach. Maybe he's better as a head coach instead of being specific, but who knows. Anyway, and now, to me, this is the Texans have one of the, if not the easiest schedules on the season. Unlike the previous years where they had no real quarterback, they had tougher schedules because they still finished first in the division somehow. But here's some bad news. Everyone's catching up. The Titans are more relevant, even though I call them the Titans. The Jags were a few plays away from making the championship if they didn't choke. Right. They could have been in the Super Bowl against the Eagles, which, I mean, I won't lie, I would have loved to see Nick Foles shit all over Blake Bortles. Anyway, so, and Andrew Luck and the Colts is a mystery on a good, if everything goes well for them, it's like, hey, it's like we just went on a 3 to 4 year hiatus, and nothing's changed since he's come back. Or it's just bad. I don't know. Either way, point is, the AFC South is not the same from before they got Watson. It's gotten harder, it's gotten tougher. If anything, this might be one of the better, if not the best division in the AFC, or of all the divisions. We'll see.
Okay.
Because we have bare minimum, three playoff contenders in the Titans, Jags, and Texans. Right, Mr. Bill?
I would agree.
They all made it. Well, 2 of them made the playoffs. The Texans could have maybe made a playoff appearance if they didn't lose Watson. Anyway, so with all that in mind, let's go into Week 1. And let me tell you, Mr. Bill, the month of September already looks to be like one of the hardest months for anybody. For one thing, 3 out of 4 games are on the road. They don't get their home opener until week 3 near the end of September.
Yep.
So first and foremost is, guess who? Everyone's favorite AFC team, the New England Patriots. In Foxborough again. And I'm going to tell you, Mr. Bill, on one hand, the Texans could very well win this because, the Patriots are not that good in the first month. This has just been a prominent thing. But then, of course, they just shit stomp, they learn their lesson, and bam, it's Super Bowl again. So on one hand, I can say they win, but I'm going to be safe and say the Texans start 0-1.
I agree.
Next up, at Tennessee. Oh boy, Mr. Bill, this one is actually going to be a bit of a tough one, perhaps. Mike Vrabel's Titans could be great, they could be a dud, I don't know, everyone likes Mariota. Mr. Chicken does too. And, well, I'm going to say that they will not win this one either. 0-2 to start.
I disagree. I don't... I like Mariota as a quarterback, but I don't think the Titans are... I don't think the Titans are the second best team in this division, so I'm giving them the Houston Texans a win in this game because they're going to come out and play really aggressively with Deshaun Watson.
I'm going off of division rival factor, personally.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, then they finally are home against the Giants, and I think they're going to win this one. For all I know, the Giants might be like 2 years ago's Dallas Cowboys, where they had Zeke, and suddenly they were a storm. They were a monster, until Aaron Rodgers came by and said howdy. But yeah, I'm going to go with the benefit of the doubt and go with Houston getting their first win of the season, and it's going to be fun.
I agree. I also have them winning over the New York Giants. It's going to be an interesting game.
Yep. Next up is at Indy. The Colts. Andrew Luck should be back if he hasn't been mauled to death by various defensive players. I don't know what their schedule is. I'm going to go with the Texans. I don't trust the Colts. I don't trust their defense. It's getting better. They're addressing their needs, but the Colts have kind of like how I feel about the Seahawks. They have so many needs in various locations. Not one draft's going to fix it all. It's going to take multiple years, so if anything, it might be best to keep shelving Andrew Luck until he's ready to go and you have a team competent for him.
I agree. I also have the Texans being the Colts. The Colts are they still really haven't addressed that defense, and they have Eric Ebron on their team, and he's good for at least 3 drops in the game.
Oh, Mr. Bill. Anyway, this is the big one. This is the one out of all the games on this schedule. This is my most circled game. It's the one NBC game we got, whereas Dallas has like 5 of them and like 3 other nighttime games. I don't know how they get it. Monday night, Thursday night, whatnot. It's the Dallas Cowboys. They're in Houston. And, Bill, Houston's gonna be loud. This time, it's the Battle of the Fours. Prescott versus Watson. And we're gonna be talking about this even more later. But, Mr. Bill, I have a proposition to you. What say I don't tell you what this game's results is until after we do the interstate rivalry?
Okay.
Keep it out, because this one is what it's going to be, and my answer will tell you who wins that game.
I'll already tell my answer as well for that will also tell you the winner.
Yeah, I'll hold that one back. So, let's move on from that. That one is going to have a question mark, even though we all know what the answer is. Let's go to next week. Another home game. Nice to be at home. This time with the Bills. Hey Bills, I hear you like the cold, but bad news, you're down south where it's hot. And I think Deshaun Watson is gonna burn the Bills secondary. Sorry, Josh Allen, it's too early for you, boy.
I agree. The Bills are they got rid of Tyrod Taylor. He was pretty accurate for them. I mean, and they made the playoffs, and then they just I don't know what the hell they're doing. So I've given the Texans a win.
That's 4 in a row, Mr. Bill, for me. That's a streak.
And for me, that's 5 in a row.
That's a hot streak. But here, Mr. Bill, it all comes down. It's Houston's going to get humbled in Jacksonville because the Jaguars, the defense is no slouch. I don't know how they're going to do it, but somehow the Jags will win because the Jags aren't the same anymore. The only thing that's still the same is Blake Bortles' skill cap.
I agree. I've got the Jaguars winning the game as well. That defense is legitimate scary.
Yeah, although, Mr. Bill, there's only one defense I fear more than them. The Neo-Purple People Eaters. And they're in your division, so you have fun with that.
Philadelphia's nothing.
No,
Hey,
Mr. Bill, I still think the Purple People Eaters now are ferocious.
True.
Anyway, let's go to Thursday Night Football. I believe this is a Thursday night game because it's presented by Amazon. And it's home to the Dolphins. Time for some sushi tonight, boys. I have Deshaun Watson just torching this Dolphins team, and it's going to be a slaughter.
I agree. I think the Dolphins could be a 1-15 team very easily this year.
I will say I do have deep fears that this game will be it's going to be color rush, so we might see a ugly matchup, not just in terms of one-sidedness, but also uniforms. You know, the Dolphins have Gatorade orange, and the Texans have that deeper blue color. I don't think those are going to blend in well. In theory, orange makes blue pop out, but considering how ugly that orange is, no. Alright, Bill. This one is, to me, one of the closest games I have to decide upon. And I think that the Broncos will lose in overtime against the Texans.
I agree as well. But I don't think it's gonna be in overtime. I think they're gonna win pretty much a little bit easier. You know, if that no-fly defense can come back, then I'll rethink that.
Yep. All right, Mr. Bill. As you know, we have reached the bye week. They have a week 9 bye.
Actually, week 10.
Oh, yep. Week 10. Sorry. So. Yeah, pretty good if I'd say so. In my opinion, they've lost 3 so far, and for you, it's just 2.
Yep.
Pretty good position. They are in the driver's seat for a playoff spot, but let's see if it keeps up. Next one is going up against Alex Smith and the Washington football team. And Bill, this one to me is a no-brainer. I'm going to go with the Texans here.
Oh, yeah. Easy win. Easy win.
All right, Mr. Belen. Here's, I think, one of the last primetime games. It's the last nighttime game. It is Monday Night Football against the Titans at home this time, where I think I'm not going to say Watson's going to put up a clinic like he did the last time Tennessee came to town, but I don't think it's going to be pretty for them.
I agree. I have the Texans winning as well.
Next up is the Cleveland Browns at home. This is a 3 home game stead, by the way. And, well, Mr. Bill, I think the Browns, who will put up a bit of a better fight compared to last year now they have Baker Mayfield, I don't know. I don't think they're going to beat the Texans here. Try again next year.
Yeah, also doesn't the Browns have Tyrod Taylor?
Yeah.
I mean...
But by now, I'm pretty sure by now, they would have Baker Mayfield starting.
I don't know. I think the Browns are going to be much better than a lot of people think. I really do believe they're an 8-8 team.
Mr. Bill, I know 5-11 is a vast improvement for 0-16, but you know.
But I'm going to say this: the Texans are going to be one of the Browns' losses this year.
What, really? Mr. Bill, when we get to week 13, you know this is going to be...
Oh, wait, no, I I meant the Texans are going to beat the Browns. What am I
No, okay, Mr. Bill. Because Bill, I hope you. I thought if you're gonna keep that up, you better bring that sauce to week 13 when we have our pick 6 segment, because that one will probably be the one-sided affair. Who's gonna go against that? Anyway, let's go to the next one. The Indianapolis Colts. It's at home. And, well, I'm going to go with the Texans, and I think this one may not even be close as well.
I agree. I've got the Texans beating the Colts both times. I don't trust Indy at all.
Yep, so now that's a 4-game win streak, and let's make it 5. Why do I say that? Because this is the Jets. The Jets, I know Sam Darnold's #scam for Sam is a good thing, but right now they're not ready. I mean, trust me, I would love nothing more than the Jets to upend the Giants. But I don't think it's now. I don't know what to trust them.
I agree. I got the Texans winning. The Jets could easily be this year's potential 0-16 team.
This is a 4:30 game on NFL Network only, and that infuriates me. Anyway, Bill, they're now on a what? From now, for me, it seems they're on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-game win streak. They've pretty much got the playoffs in sight if they haven't clinched a spot already. But the Eagles, the defending champs, thrive in winter. And I think they're not going to lose to a southern-based team. So, yeah, in the cold, the Eagles soar.
I agree. I've got the Eagles with a healthy Carson Wentz and a really scary offense and defense winning as well.
But Mr. Bill, then here it comes, the Sunday Night Football game. This one, I feel like, has a chance to be a Sunday Night Football finale, and it's the Jaguars in Houston. And I think this game will be a little close, but Houston will prevail and win the division.
And I've got Houston losing this game. They're going to lose both to the Jags. I think this will be a close game, and I do think this will be for the division crown, this game.
We'll see what happens then, Mr. Bill. All right, so we can't exactly reveal our full results until we talk about Dallas and Houston, so let's get into it. Interstate rivalry, the finale, the best one. Dallas versus Houston. This one's my favorite because everyone loves the darling little Cowboys. But let's break it down and see if there's some basis for it or if it's dumbfounded. So, Mr. Bill, are you ready?
I'm ready as I'll ever be.
All right, offense. Let's break this one down. Let's start at the quarterback. I will tell you, I feel like I enjoy Watson better, but they are still so young. It is still hard to tell how high their ceilings are, but at the very least, I can say they are both competent enough to win games. Prescott showed that in his first and second years, a little bit less in second year too, but year one he was dominant. Watson has also been dominant. Watson has had less performance time, but in his little bit of time, he has shown a lot of potential. He just needs to stay healthy.
Right. I mean, and the other thing is Watson last year with basically no true dominant running back was lighting teams on fire, while Dak Prescott really needed a running back to set the league on fire. So that's my distinction right now. Watson just played better with less. And, I mean, he doesn't have less in terms of wide receivers, but we'll get to that later.
Yeah, but let's speak of the running backs now. Now, Mr. Bill, as you know, they have Zeke. In fact, you kind of have to realize that some people thought, oh, it's fine if they don't have Zeke for 6 games, because Dak Prescott's so good, he'll will them into the playoffs anyway. But the loss of Zeke was really felt hard last year. You could argue that whole situation was why they missed in the first place. Because they went 9-7 without him. And I predicted that schedule or that record correctly last year. And where are the haters now? Where are the haters now? Let's talk. I'm still waiting for a discussion, but okay. Anyway,
Right.
I never thought I'd see a day, at least right in this time and age, where you can still have your top tier quarterback, but not function as much just because you're more dependent on the running back. It's fascinating to me. It surprises me, Mr. Bill.
Oh yeah, I mean, and that's one area that I do think Dallas has over Houston on the offense is their running back.
I'm a little more different on that. I feel like it's a slight edge, but not a decisive one. There's only one thing, in my opinion, Dallas has a decisive edge on Houston for, but that's for later.
Right.
But Mr. Bill, Houston has Lamar Miller. They have and they have D'Onta Foreman. D'Onta Foreman is working to become the bell cow. If anything, as the year went on, he was starting to show a little more promise. And then, of course, that Bethea guy from the Cardinals had to tear his Achilles. That asshole. Nice job. I hate you. But anyway, enough of the past. D'Onta Foreman showed some promise. If he keeps that up, he will become the bell cow, and that basically lets Lamar Miller keep his legs fresh, because Lamar Miller can run. It's just he cannot run every time. He's not like a Zeke. He is not like an Arian Foster. The one thing I think Houston needs to realize is that right now, with their situation, they need to use multiple running backs and see which one is best fit for certain schemes and let the other one do the other. Which, having a multitude of running backs that can do various tasks is not a bad thing as long as you can keep them healthy and keep them fresh.
Right.
Because everyone thinks you just need one really good running back to win. How do I put it? The Eagles last year had some great running backs, but none of them were exactly, what's the word I would say, in that Le'Veon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott tier. They had good running backs that did different things, and they still won a Super Bowl with them.
Right.
So basically, you turn them into role players and make them do their specific jobs, and you might get some good things out of it. That's why I'm saying, on paper, you think that the Cowboys should decisively win this edge, but I don't think it's as decisive because, as the Eagles proved, you don't always need a top-tier running back to win. Just have a bunch of them that can do different tasks. But let's move on to the flashiest one. Oh boy, if you told me this last year, or 2 years ago, when the Cowboys' wide receiving core was actually pretty good, this one would actually be very tough for me. But right now, with after what happened this last offseason, the tight ends are about the same. Nobody has a distinctive standout tight end because Jason Witten moved up to the press box, and C.J. Fedorowicz, who actually looked promising, retired due to concussion worries, which I don't blame him for at all. That man got wrecked hard, and he shouldn't have. Anyway, so tight ends, there's nothing decisive there. It's not close at all. There's nothing.
Right. I mean, both teams are kind of
they're searching
at that position, but I mean, I trust Houston's just a tad bit more.
Houston right now depends on the tight end more, in my opinion, than Dallas, because they used to depend on Witten. I don't even know what they're going to do without him. Anyway, so let's talk wide receivers, because this one, to me, out of all of the offensive side, is by far the easiest for me to determine in the favor of Houston. Houston has better wide receivers. Mr. Bill, let's see. Who's the wide receiving core for Houston? Refresh my memory.
Good old DeAndre Hopkins. Good old Will Fuller. You got a little bit of Braxton Miller in there. I mean, it's
Bruce Ellington.
They got Bruce Ellington. I mean, they have weapons upon weapons that they can line up on your defense.
Yep, and I think that this is one of the better wide receiving cores, not only in the AFC, but in in all of football. Anyway, so right now, based on unofficial depth charts, here's what the Cowboys have for them: Allen Hurns, Terrence Williams, Cole Beasley as their main three. The rest are, I wouldn't call them nobodies, but I don't know who the fuck they are. But anyway, in my opinion, Mr. Bill, I feel like this one's very easy. If they had Dez, we might have had a better discussion. But now, with what they did and how they treated Dez, how they just kicked him out and then shit-talked him later to keep attention on themselves instead of the anthem, now it's like you guys are actually weak in wide receiver. For once, you may actually have to draft offense, which I don't want you to do, but you may have to.
Right.
Anyway, last thing, this is to me what I call a blast processing situation. Mr. Bill, as you might remember, there was that whole, in the video game wars, you had Super Nintendo versus the Genesis from Sega. Sega, with their Genesis, was outclassed in almost everything except for one thing: their blast processing. They had better processing power for their console over the SNES. So they kept beating that like a drum and just saying, hey, we have blast processing. In other words, for me, the Cowboys have that in their offensive line. But we have an offensive line. We can protect Dak Prescott. We can help Zeke get set up for a big run. And I will agree, They do have the better offensive line over Houston. Is it the best in all of football? No, that's probably Phillies.
Yeah,
but
I would say Phillies.
I say it's respectable, but let's just say it's seen better days. And it does have injury risk, because for 2 years now, there have been some consistent players who keep getting hurt and taken out for a few weeks. So it's starting to break down. But I feel like Dallas has that decisive edge, but that's all they got. So, Bill, in your opinion, who do you think has the edge here overall on offense?
Now, my edge on offense goes to Houston, and there's a decided factor for that, and that is Deshaun Watson with those wide receivers and Deshaun's ability to run. Whereas what's going to happen to Dallas and Ezekiel Elliott, they're going to stack the box. They're going to harass Dak Prescott. Even if he does run around, they'll spy him. I think the Cowboys' offense is going to be stymied, and I think the Houston offense is going to be explosive. And I just give them the edge because they have freaking DeAndre Hopkins. That's case closed number 1. Case closed number 2 is Deshaun Watson.
Yep, even if Dez was still on their team, I was going to ask, do you think, okay, who's the top 10 wide receiver? Are they both top 10 wide receivers? You can try to argue Bryant, but I don't think he is, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say both of them were top 10. Now here's the bigger question, who's top 5? Not Bryant. Is Hopkins on there? Yes. Is Hopkins on top 3? Yes. It's him, Julio, and Antonio Brown. They're the trifecta, the cream of the crop wide receivers right now. The top tiers, the kings, the 3 kings.
Yep.
So anyway, if anything, I feel like if Hopkins has a remarkable year this year, if Watson stays healthy, you may see him be considered one of the better ones, even above someone like a Julio Jones or Antonio Brown. I don't know. It's up there. It's possible. Anyway, let's move on to defense. I feel like this one is actually the easiest subject of them all, maybe. But let's go into defensive line. In theory, you want to say this is case closed. Houston has, well, Bill, do I need to remind you who they have? They got my boy J.J. Watt, the future mayor of Houston. He owns Houston. It's his land now. And then you have Whitney Merciless coming off an injury. Jadeveon Clowney, he's due for a very good contract, in my opinion. You have them blocking, like playing run stopping and just like slamming the quarterback to the ground and destroying offensive lines. I will say, on theory, you think, oh, it's just Houston's, no problem. I want to say a little not so fast, because I know it sounds dumb, Mr. Bill. You may think it is, but over the past couple of years, the Dallas defensive line, specifically the line, has been getting better. Tyrone Crawford is stepping up. You have I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, and he just got the DeMarcus Lawrence. You have DeMarcus Lawrence, who was actually considered Defensive Player of the Year. That's actually pretty good. They have I think DeMarcus Lawrence and I can't believe I forgot his name again. I feel bad. Tyrone Crawford. I think those
Yeah.
two actually make a good case for one of the better duos in the league. But to be honest, that's
Right.
probably all I can say about that's praiseworthy of Dallas's defensive line. Because true, DeMarcus Lawrence, Tyron Crawford, dangerous combination. Taco Charlton, if he steps up, well, we can definitely add him in the discussion. But ultimately, I feel like this is a slight edge in the favor of Houston. Because, sure,
Right.
Dallas has a respectable defensive line, but the problem is the rest of their team on defense is not stepping up. Basically, if they had a little bit more of synergy, as like Houston's defense did in the past years, well then, I wouldn't be saying their defense was a problem anymore, now would I?
Right. I mean, it all starts up front, and Dallas has a decent front four, but to me, it's nothing compared
Let's
to
put it this way.
Houston.
Let's say I comprise the defensive line of nothing but the best players in the league, but on return, you have the worst secondary players in the league. Basically, most of those quarterbacks think, okay, I just need to throw the ball before they can get to me, because I don't need to worry about these secondary players no matter what.
Right.
Basically,
Yep.
it goes to show that you can, even if you have the best defensive line, it may not matter if your secondary cannot. Basically, what's the word? So the secondary is meant to prevent the quarterback from finding an opportune time to throw, so the defensive line can reach him on time and bring him down to the ground, humble him.
Right. Yeah.
Now let's go linebackers. So, okay, Sean Lee is still there. They did draft Leighton Vander Esch, and you still have Jalen Smith, who is showing a little promise, but Vander Esch and Sean Lee are injury risks. Vander Esch's his report card was that he has a bit of an injury history like Sean Lee. So if he doesn't get hurt again, it's an upgrade. Guess what, Sean Lee, your time is running out. But if not, it's like it's literally Sean Lee Volume 2.
Right.
Houston has what?
I was just gonna say Sean Lee's only getting old.
Yep. Also, apparently they have a linebacker named Joe Thomas. When did he sneak out of Cleveland?
He didn't.
Yeah. Anyway, so Houston. I mean, technically Clowney is a linebacker, but they pretty much stack him as a defensive lineman. So I don't even know what you do with that. But anyway,
Yeah,
so let's see. So, Mr. Bill, I was going to tell you. So, who do you know that's on the Texans' the linebackers?
To be honest, I don't really know your guys' linebackers very much.
Rip. Well then, Mr. Bill, I will gladly remind you. Just I need to make sure I get the proper listing. Okay, so you got, as I mentioned, technically Whitney Merciless is also part of that, but he plays more defensive line, pass rush, and stuff. But you got Zach Cunningham, who is, I think, year 2 now. But I was mad at him last year. Benardrick McKinney has stepped up, is becoming a much better player. Brian Peters.
Right.
And I believe we also have Dylan Cole, but he's still in. Oh, and Brendan Scarlett, who in my opinion is very underrated. Like, I wouldn't say he's like one of the best, obviously, I'm not going to say that, but I think he's a very underrated second, I guess to use another basketball term again, the same term, off the bench linebacker. I feel like this one is less decisive, because even if I didn't count Whitney Merciless and Jadeveon Clowney, Benardrick McKinney is not as much of an injury risk. He's generally been healthy. Brendan Scarlett, to me, is underrated. I also like Brian Peters. Zach Cunningham is... The thing I like about Zach Cunningham is he's also a great run stopper. So, on top of having Clowney, Watt, and Merciless just rushing the quarterback, you also have the risk of good old Zach boy over here, Benardrick McKinney, but Zach can also stop the run like as great as Clowney is. So, why would you run into either of them, especially when they're next to each other?
Right.
Anyway, Dallas... Okay, first let's go into the secondary, the last thing. The Texans have Kevin Johnson, who's out right now with a concussion as of the recording of this video. It looked pretty bad, but you still have Jonathan Joseph and...
Good old the Honey Badger.
Yep, Kareem Jackson. I was going to get to him. But Kareem Jackson, you got the draft pick in Justin Reed, so we'll see if he's good. But Honey Badger is on forward safety, which I love the Honey Badger. It's my favorite animal now. It used to be the cheetah, but now the Honey Badger is my fave. But anyway, this is to me the one risky thing about the about this defense. I just don't know if they're still going to keep it up because Jonathan Joseph has, how do I put it? He is disappointing me. He hasn't had a consistent, healthy year. He keeps getting hurt, and he does not, how do I put it? For a first-round pick, he does not play up to my standards. But Jonathan Joseph and Kareem Jackson are getting old. Justin Reed is a wait-and-see thing. Honey Badger, I am very interested in. He too just needs to stay healthy. But so far, it looks like he's translating well in practice, like he never lost a step.
That's a good thing.
Anyway, as for the Dallas Cowboys, they have let me see if I say it right. Chidobe Awuzie. I remember this was picked by the guy. I think it was Drew Pearson who did it, the one who was like shitting on the Eagles, and then now it just became a famous last word situation. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have Chidobe Awuzie, Jeff Heath, and Xavier Woods, who I think is pretty good. Oh, and Byron Jones, but that's really about all they got. So to me, Bill, I feel like apart from the defensive line, most of this is much more easily decided. The Dallas cornerback group is way too young. Unless someone steps up now, I have no reason to give them a chance right now. I need to see them step up.
Yeah.
Whereas I've seen what?
I was just gonna say you have a bunch of no-namers versus Tyrann Mathieu. Yeah.
Yeah. And so both of us are in agreement that it's gone in favor of Houston.
Sure.
Oh, hey Bill, you still there?
There. Yep, I got you now.
Okay. Yeah, you disappeared.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right then. Before we get to the head coach, the last spot, allow me to get Mr. Chicken's statements so we can get over the. His are very blunt, but he breaks down the categories. QB edge Houston. For QBs he is the edge to Houston, but Dak is pretty good. And for running backs, Dallas, and it's not close. Wide receivers, Houston, and it's not close. O-line, Dallas. I don't think he gives specific points, so that one's the only one I'm not sure about. Defense, Houston versus Dallas. D-line is closer than you would think, but talent on Houston line edges Dallas. Linebacker, again, close, but I'll give the edge to Houston here. Defensive backs, Dallas is a sneaky underrated secondary. They get the edge. And coaching, well, Garrett is awful. Boo this man. I love that. Alright, so I feel like, okay, sure, Jason Garrett's had a couple 13-3 seasons recently, or some pretty good seasons. I think they had 12-4 and 13-3. But on the other hand, O'Brien is an established. He's a champion for one thing. He won when he was a offensive coordinator for the Patriots. He won a ring there. And as things stand right now, I prefer O'Brien as a coach because, well, I feel like he's the only one who actually addresses the team and is not a bitch to Bob McNair. Whereas Jason Garrett is, he bends the knee for good old Jerry boy.
I mean, and let's just be brutally honest. Jason Garrett is a glorified 8-8 head coach.
But he will never leave.
He's what Jeff Fisher would be if he was skinny and didn't have a mustache.
Hmm. But Mr. Bill, Jason Garrett will never leave because he never says anything bad to Jerry Jones. He lets Jerry Jones run the show, and that's what Jerry wants. He likes to run everything, but that's another subject for another day. We've talked about that before. So, Mr. Bill, who wins this?
Who wins coaching? I mean, overall, the entire staff of Houston is a better staff
And besides, a
than
couple of them have already
Dallas.
been picked up and put on other teams. Mike Vrabel's now the head coach of the Titans. He could have been the
Yeah,
coach of the 49ers, but he rejected it, and Scott Shanahan took the job. Or Kyle Shanahan,
mean,
sorry. Kyle Shanahan.
and for me, it just Jason Garrett's the ultimate deciding block on for a head coach, and he's a proven Jeff Fisher type. He has an occasional great season and is mediocre the rest of the time, and he somehow keeps his job for multiple years. So, to me, he's a perennial A8, so I give Houston that edge.
Yep.
Easy.
So, let's see. Bill, who do you have winning that Sunday night game?
Who do I have winning that Sunday night game? I have the Houston Texans defeating the Dallas Cowboys in that Sunday night
I do
game.
too, in triumphant fashion. So with that in mind, Mr. Bill, what's your final record for the Texans?
My final record for the Houston Texans is a 12-4 record.
That's good. I also have a 12-4 record, Mr. Bill. I have them winning the division. Or you guys have them as a wild card team. Probably the fifth spot.
And that's what's scary about that is I think the Jaguars are a 13-3 team.
Even with Blake Bortles, I have them as like a 10-6, 11-5.
That defense is legit. Even if Blake Bortles throws for 80 yards in a playoff game or something, they keep them in it and they win games for them.
Yep. But anyway, Mr. Bill, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Nothing much. It's crazy that the preseason is nearly over.
Yep, and soon we will be back, hopefully with Mr. Chicken in tow, and we will be back for week 1. That should be fun. So I don't have anything else I like to have added. So yeah, I think we'll see you guys in week 1.